I really like learning, but I like learning what I wanted to learn, not what school made me learn. I hated school. I hated everything about it. But I really like learning. So business allowed me to do that. I get to learn what I want to learn, and it just happens to be within a business framework, right? So if I want to spend time researching cryptocurrency, right, for fun, I can do that. And my wife jokes because basically I do whatever I want and I just justify it as a business expense. Well, I'm just, it's market research, right?
Yeah.
Let's impact some today. I think we're going to do a great job.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Modern Man Podcast. As always, thank you for the time. We appreciate it, and we certainly won't take it for granted. This is a podcast where we're on a mission of helping men get connected in pursuit of their potential, and we do that by embracing discomfort, cultivating community, and putting wind in each other's sails. Before we get wind in our sails from our guest today, I first want to remind folks to hit that like button, subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. Leave us a rating if you're listening on your favorite streaming app, because that's the best compliment that you can give us. And even more so, share this with a friend if you get value from these episodes, because it means so much to us in helping keeping this podcast going. With that being said, let's get that win in our sails from our guest today. I'm excited because this is a good friend of mine, Justin Draplin, CEO of Eclipse Cottages, joining us on the call. Justin, thank you for taking the time. I know you got a full Rolodex.
Man, I'm so happy to be here. I just want to horse around with my buddy Ted and see what happens.
Oh yeah, we're gonna have some fun, Justin. And before we hop in and horse around a little bit, I want to make sure that the audience has a chance to meet you. So I want to make sure that you have a good opportunity to introduce yourself in your own words, because I could say my good friend, I could say the title, but that doesn't tell the whole story. So please take the floor really quick, let people know who you are, what you do, and we could chat a little bit more.
So my name's Justin Draplin. Ted likes to refer to me as Super Genius. I'm married, 4 kids, ages 11, 9, 7, soon to be 5. They are my world. Love my wife. Shout out to her, Jackie. And I do tiny homes. I do development. I'm in solar. I love business. I love people. That's it. That's it. That's all me. That's it. That's all there is.
Yeah, I love it because I love you started with family, because when we talked about this podcast episode and getting together and horsing around, as you mentioned, I was like, man, what do we talk about? And you said, take your pick. And I'm going to use your words here, because I pulled up the email. It says, pick a couple. I'm a real winner. And if you don't mind, man, I love the humility in that, because a title like CEO, I remember as a young kid thinking that these people were, anointed or something, right? Like these people are different, or, my path is not going to lead to that. But you have such a humble story and things that you've overcome and what you do on a daily basis, and to give credence and credit to your family there shows where your values and your foundation is. So I'd love to know how that came about. Was that always the case? Was it something crafted over time? Or is that kind of where you are now in life, and it's come through trials, tribulations, and a couple lessons along the way?
Oh, goodness gracious. So first, I want to clarify that when I said I'm a real winner, there was a lot more sarcasm in the way that I wrote it than the way that you read it. Okay?
Fair enough.
Man, growing up, I was a train wreck. I was a complete train wreck. I suffered with insecurity. I got into drugs and alcohol. I could not keep a friend for the life of me. I was a loner, not necessarily because I wanted to be, but because I thought I had to be. If I hurt you first, you can't get too close and therefore hurt me, kind of stuff. So no, this is definitely not how I always was. I would say anybody that has ever known me and my history would agree with that statement. It was a journey, it's been a long journey. It's been a great journey. And I pray and hope that journey continues to develop over time. And it's been a fantastic one.
What do you think? What do you think it was that drove you in that direction first? So I like going full arc with this story because, early on, I like to get deep and quick because I want to make sure we have some time on the back end to kind of show the flowers, right? And the growth. So what do you think it was that drove you to that mindset of like, hey, if I hurt you first, you can't hurt me. You thought you had to be this loner. What do you think was some of the seeds behind that?
Honestly, some of it came to be with my parents getting divorced when I was younger. I was maybe in kindergarten. And, it was a situation where I had to watch my parents fight. And, it was almost like I got put on the back burner. And if they ever hear this, I know that they'd probably be hurt by hearing that. But, and then my dad lost custody. So my mom, we spent a lot of time with my mom, but then my dad, it was every Wednesday after school and every other weekend. And, as I got older, that kind of faded away because then you get friends and, you don't want to spend that time. And so it was just
question.
Yeah.
Every Wednesday, every other weekend. Was that enough for you?
Absolutely not. To this day, I have issues with that. I get so jealous of men that have relationships with their fathers. And that had that relationship growing up, I don't have, I remember playing some basketball with my dad, playing a little bit of catch. But, once a week isn't enough. There's so much that I missed out with, especially when you get into dealing with girls and those kinds of relationships. And so, having never had that solid man relationship, you need, in my opinion, you need solid, comfortable, confident, credible, encouraging relationship with men or with your same sex, your same gender, whatever, before you can understand how to have a quality relationship with the opposite gender, in my opinion. I think that there's a lot of value to be had. They're different. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say that they're the same at all. But for me, it was that, building relationships and having friends helped me build me as far as understanding who I am. It was easier for me to not put my value in them. It was more a relationship. Whereas before I got sober, it was, my identity was wrapped in whoever I could get to like me. But then I could hurt them, right? And maintain this sick control of the relationship, right? It was just not good at all.
Yeah. So high school, college, Justin, how did you operate relationships, friendships, and how did that perpetuate into the work life afterwards, right? Because I think a lot of us as men, we go through a lot of development through high school and college, right? That's, I would say for me, where I came out of my shell, that's where a lot of the foundations for where I am now kind of started. But obviously I had to take a lot of detours since then. There were a lot of things that were implemented there that were boys leading boys when I joined a fraternity, when I was young in the football team. So there were a lot of things instilled in me of boys leading boys, but there were also things that I got out of that time that has helped me feel more confident, kind of in terms of where football was more of where I kind of learned how to give and take a hard time, joke around, things like that. That's where I got my tough skin, which was good, but it didn't always translate well in the real world. So how were you through high school and college talking about those relationships that you'd be able to manipulate, which wasn't good, but then how did the real world change that?
Yeah. And keep in mind, it wasn't even intentional, right? It took me getting sober and looking back and being like, oh my goodness. My wife today, she would have never talked to me in a million years if she had met me back then. So what I got from it, I honestly don't know. I can't say that I got a whole lot of good. I learned a lot about like how not to be during that time. So, I guess that is learning. I got into trouble, not even trouble. My problem was I got away with it, right? So, starting in ninth grade, I'm doing drugs, but I'm still getting good grades. That was more of a problem for me. Like, I feel like if I would have gotten more trouble faster, it may have helped me.
Mm-hmm.
I remember senior in high school, I was in AP Calc. And I remember being in there for my final exam at AP Calc, and having a nervous breakdown because I was on so much wacky stuff at that time, like doing drugs during school in high school. And I had a nervous breakdown for the final for AP Calc, and I got like a 7%. I could barely put my name on the stupid paper. Wow. And I just walked out, and I still remember that. But the crazy thing about that is, keep in mind, that was AP Calc I did that for while going through this in high school. And then I still was able to test out of math in college. So like, I haven't taken math since AP Calc in high school, but I'm a college graduate because I was able to test out of math because, I took the college whatever, and I got my college credit for it. Never taken math. How? By the grace of God. I don't know how, I don't know why, but I did. So that was why I was able to get away from it. So that's why I don't know that I learned a lot during that time. Other than looking back and saying, oh gosh, that's not how I want to live my life. Yeah. Relationship wise, again, it was just, I learned a lot of examples of how to these are the relationships I don't want. This is not how I should treat people. This is not how I deserve to be treated. That would probably be the most value I learned from that time is, what not to do.
Yeah, which is valuable feedback for those listening and watching. I definitely would point that out is, sometimes we have the examples of what to do, but also we have the examples in our lives of what not to do. And, there's usually things that's like, why don't you like X? It's like, because I've tried it. I've done it. I don't like it. Right. Like, I've been there, done that, bought the t-shirt. I'm not going back. So there are lessons in both paths. And something I want to touch on a little bit later when you talked about your wife would never talk to you in a million years had she met you back then. My wife can definitely say the same sentiment for me. So you have two men here who are now, I would say, happily married to women who would not have married their old selves. So there is going to be credence there and some value there later on. But I guess I want to touch on, where did the lessons start coming in? Where did some of the, all right, Justin, this is not working out, start kind of creeping in your head? Whether it was life, whether it was just a mirror moment where you're like, I got to change, or was it life that punched you in the face?
Yeah, it was, I guess, all my decisions catching up with myself. Right. And I ended up I was in a very unhealthy relationship, and ended up getting a drunk driving in college. And it was bad. I had some suicidal thoughts, and that's one of the scariest moments was being in court and having, I did the questionnaire, like, have you ever done this? Have you ever done this? And I'm being honest, right? And hearing the judge read back that I had suicidal thoughts, it was like one of those moments of like, wait a minute, no, I take it back, but the reality was that I did. And I was being honest about it, but it was like, I wanted to immediately minimize it because I realized, like, that's not good. Right. That was one moment that stuck out. And another moment actually came while so I had violated my probation after I was drinking, and I knew I had this problem, right? I knew I wanted to quit drinking. I knew it wasn't doing anything good for me, but I couldn't. And it was as simple as me telling my buddies, I'm not drinking anymore. Him saying, I'll buy your first drink. Me saying, what time? Right? It was like that easy to get me to the bar, right? Even though in my head, when I said I was done, I was done. I really meant it. That's the sick part of the disease of alcoholism, right? But I remember getting then sent to outpatient. And I remember the guy leading it, and there's 20 of us in a group, and he asked two questions back to back. The first question he asked was, who wants to stop drinking? Right? All 20, 30 people raise their hand. Oh yeah, me. Yeah, we're all in there. Yep. yeah, absolutely. That's why we're here, to stop drinking. Thank you very much. And his next question, because we're all idiots, was, who's going to drink again? All the hands went down except for mine. And it was one of those moments, okay, the other people are just liars.
Yeah.
They lied at one or the other. I don't know what one, but they're lying. But I knew I was being honest. I knew that I really wanted to stop drinking, but I also knew that I was going to drink again. And so that was a moment that really stuck out in my head of like, something's wrong with me, right? Like anybody with any common sense could point to that and be like, something is screwed up with that, right? And so I realized it. And, did I drink that night? You're darn right I did. But it planted the seed. Those are the seeds that got planted of like, hey, you really need to examine what you're doing. I would say those are probably the two biggest moments.
That's all it takes sometimes. It's just that seed, because I think a lot of us, right, where they say, oh, admitting you have a problem is the first step. Like, it might sound cliche, but for so many of us, for myself, when I decided to kind of like turn my life around, when my dad finds a pack of cigarettes, bra in the closet, when my parents are coming to visit, and he's like, what kind of women do you have in here and everything? Like, I was not making
yours, wasn't it?
It was my bra. He should have known, but cigarettes were hers.
You were bench pressing a lot at the time. Don't worry, we know.
I'm up to an A cup now, man. But that was literally, it was like my dad, like, look at him, like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? And that was a moment for me of like, hey, I realize I got to change some things. But to your point, I didn't change that day. I didn't change that night or that weekend, right? But that seed usually sometimes is just enough for us to start watering a different idea, watering a different mindset, which will water a different identity, which could lead to difference of behaviors. What do you think was it that actually triggered the change, right? Because at some point in time, you did stop drinking. At some point in time, you did have that last drink. What do you think sparked that change in behavior?
Getting sentenced to go to AA meetings after I violated my probation.
There you go.
I mean, that was part of the watering, right? That was part of the, hey, you need to address this problem. And I still, even after I started doing that, I still remember my last drink. And kind of one of the sayings is, if you don't remember your last drink, you haven't had it yet. And I still remember it was a Guinness, and I remember being halfway through it, and I had quit for good, for the 30th time or whatever. And I remember looking into the glass thinking, oh my gosh, I'm doing it again.
Ooh.
And then I finished it, because that's what alcoholics do. But that was my last drink. And I got more serious with it. It was like, at first when I was trying to get sober and clean my life out, it was like I couldn't make it a day, right? And then I got like, okay, well, I could get a week or two goes by, and it's like proof, like, see, right? I told you I didn't need it. Time to go celebrate, right? Forget the fact that I said I was going to never do it again. I proved that I could, so therefore I can, right? It was kind of just working through that that mental problem, right? It's the same mental issue. It was just starting to put some sobriety to it, starting to water some healthy habits, as you had mentioned, hanging out with sober people, having sober conversation. It's very different. I'm telling you, people, if you don't realize that your conversation is on a whole different level when you're drinking than when you're sober, you might want to take a look at that, because it's very different. And so just starting to have healthy relationships, right? Of people that were wanting to get sober, do better. That was all very, very needed in my life. I mean, but ultimately it's God, right? And we kind of skipped over that in the beginning, and without God, I'm nothing. So we just lost connection. If you want to play this to let people know that we lost connection, make sure they know. So if it sounds disjointed, I'm not this crazy. So that was when I realized, okay, let me circle back. So God is ultimately the most important thing in my life. Without that, I don't have anything else that follows. And so what sobriety brought me to was a relationship with God. Before I got sober, I believed in a quote unquote higher power, but not God. I mean, I was so stupid and delusional because like I'm talking about the same exact thing and saying I believe one and not the other, but it's like, yes, that is an apple. I see that as an apple, but I'm not going to acknowledge that that is an apple. Like, what? It's the same thinking that I had, like being an alcoholic, right? Like anybody can point to that and be like, that brain ain't working right. And so I had to get kind of past that kind of stuff and coming to a truth, a belief in that higher power, building a relationship with that higher power, prayer, giving back. I never thought about giving back ever. That was never, it was all about me. What can I get from this? Right. And now my conversations are, how can I help you? Right. And, when we're talking, hey, what do you want out of this podcast? I'm like, I really don't care. I just want to, I just want to chill with Ted. If I have to schedule a podcast and share my story to get time with Ted, I'm going to do it because I like Ted.
Get on my calendar.
But I mean, that's just it. Like I enjoy this. I enjoy spending time with people. That's what's important. And if my story can be the seed for somebody else, or be the watering, as you say, for somebody else to say, oh, look, I'm on the right path, right? I'm going to fall. I'm going to make mistakes, but I can always get back on it. And that's partly what God taught me was like, we're never too lost.
Yeah.
And that can be a hard concept, but I've lived it. I should be dead. The saying is big house, bug house, or the box. Like I should have been in one of them. Right.
Yeah.
And I'm not. And that's a flipping miracle. Why do I believe in God? That's exactly why, because I deserved and I should have been in one of those, and I'm not. Quite frankly, that's as much proof as I need. Now he's giving me a lot more proof, but for me, like, that's my story.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're here, man. And I appreciate you sharing that story, because it certainly is. It is a seed for somebody, because the intro, right? I say the name Justin in the title, CEO, Eclipse Cottages. In the mind, a lot of people are like, oh, this guy's got it figured out, and nothing. So pulling back the curtain, and that's literally everything you just mentioned with that story. Sure, it wasn't the whole thing, but the cliff notes, right? It was what you kind of put before the, I'm a real winner, right? Which is probably why no one really got the sarcasm at first. But honestly, you are a winner, man, because you've triumphed and you've come out on top, right? And you've gotten the prize, which we'll talk about right now, because you said it earlier. My wife would not have talked to me. and I remember I met my wife after I graduated college. She was still a sophomore in college. And we joke all the time, because this was before Tinder and Bumble and all those dating apps. But she said, had that been around and we went to college together, she would have swiped left on me. Just because of how I carried myself in school, the reputation I had in school, and really where I was mindset wise wasn't quite all there yet. I had a lot of development to do. So 4.5, 5 years later, when the same person met me, because, oh, you're living in a similar city, a relationship flourished, because I was a different person. I was the same. I was Ted. I was still Ted, but I was a different Ted than she had met. And because of that, we are now married, and I'm excited for the years that we're going to be spending together. But when did your wife come into picture, and how was that for you in terms of, as you mentioned, having healthier relationships, being sober? Maybe she came before you were sober. I'd be interested to know how that worked out.
So actually, I think it was about 2.5 or 3 years sober when I actually met my wife. Prior to that, I mean, in that 3 years, I didn't do a lot of date. I had been on an occasional date, but you got to keep in mind, I was a complete train wreck. The best thing that happened to me was really, she's just not that into me. None of them. Right. Mm-hmm. So like, I mean, I didn't have a lot going for me, right? I didn't know how to dress, right? I wasn't like a flashy dresser. I didn't have a lot of money. truly, I was not a winner, right?
But you're on your way.
I was on my way. Yeah. And, for whatever reason, she saw who I was trying to be. I think that's all I can chalk it up to, is she saw where I was aiming. She wasn't looking at me as much where I was at, but she was looking where I was aiming. Because shortly after that, I quit my job. I was unemployed. She started paying some bills, right? It was like, she's crazy. The more I learn about me, I joke, the more I learn about me, the more I disgusted I am with my wife that she married me. Like, what were you thinking?
It's like, hold on, you good?
Yeah, because I was still a train wreck, right? I still did not have it together, but I can honestly say I was more, and I hope that I've continued to progress throughout this time, and I believe that I have, but I was a more caring person. It was more about what am I going to bring into that relationship? And that's why I didn't date a lot, right? Because that was what was hammered into me. Well, what do you provide into the relationship? It's not about what you can get out of the relationship. It's what you can pour into it. And if you don't have something to pour into it, you really have no reason to be in that relationship. And so at that time, what I did have was a relationship with God. That I did have. I had a prayer life. I had that, right? No, I didn't. I mean, I was making okay money at the time, but I didn't have anything saved,
Did you pray with your wife when you started dating?
So we did. One of the things that she actually brought up was, I'm Catholic, so I would go to Catholic service, and she came to service with me very early in our relationship. Probably too early, because it freaked her out a little bit, because everybody knew me, because I was active and a youth group leader, and very active in all these different things in the church. So not everybody, but a lot of people knew me. So when I brought a girl, she got swarmed, right?
Yeah.
Oh, is this the one? It's like, whoa, dude, this is, it's been 3 weeks we've been dating. Slow your roll, Deacon.
Should we set a date? Hold on, man.
Right. I mean, honestly, she may have gotten that question when she came, but she knew my faith was important to me. She knew God was important to me. And she was the one that brought up, hey, do you want to start reading? So in the Catholic Church, you do the same reading, the readings in advance for that service. And I had mentioned that was something that I wanted to start doing, was reading those in advance so you can get more from it when the preacher is talking about it, right? And so she was the one that actually brought it up and took some initiative of, let's do that, right?
Nice.
Let's pull up these Bible verses that we're going to go sit at service and start reading. Now, that's something that I really wish we did more of, and I really need to step up my game. I'm not blaming her at all. This is really on me, right? I'm distracted with work. We got 4 kids. It's easy to make excuses. I get that. And I'm just failing. I'm still not a winner, right? The more I learn and the healthier I get, the more unhealthy I realize I am and was, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I mean, we've said it before. I've told people on the podcast, I'm a work in progress. And a lot of guys that have been on the podcast, yourself included, and even me as the host, I try and make sure that there's no facade for the listeners and people at home. We're no different than anybody else that's out there, right? Yeah. We've made the mistakes. We've fallen on our face, and I'm surprised I still get paid with this ugly mug. But it's one of those things where I'm a work in progress. I'm still figuring this out. I'm still trying to improve a little bit. And I look back and see how far I've come, which is great, but I still have a long way to go. And I think you're kind of putting out those same sentiments, which is very humble of you, because I would say you've accomplished, and this is obviously from the outside looking in, as we mention a lot, because we never know really what's behind closed doors for some people. So you being transparent and telling us that journey is huge, because I mean, from everything that I've seen, I mean, let's talk about Eclipse Cottages. not only the tiny homes that you've been building, the new Comet model that's come out, but also the tiny home village that you're also building, and the things that that can do for the world, and also the net zero aspect of it, of what it could do for the environment. The life that you're living, Justin, is providing a ripple effect of good. And I'm interested to know how the building blocks first came together, how the business first came together, how the growth with 4 kids in the family came together. I mean, we don't have to go into the anatomy and the biology of how that happens.
When a man and a woman love each other very much, Ted. It was prayer, following God, trying to do what's best for other people, for my family, for my wife. My wife grew up in Texas. We were living in Michigan, right? If you're not used to 6 months of misery, it's particularly difficult, right? So snow, clouds, nonstop, all the time. It's terrible. Well, she grew up most of her life in Texas, right? Austin, Texas. It's like sunny and 100 degrees, like almost all year, right? So that was difficult. She was staying home with the kids. In prayer, it was just, you need to change this. This is not good. This is not what's best for everybody. All my family was there, and that's what I was kind of latching on to. I was active in my church. My church was there. And in prayer, I got this calling of, you're okay. It's time, and I knew what that meant. I knew it. It was, go on, go forth. Take what you've learned and bring it with you, right? And I was kind of mad at God, actually. I was pissed. I was like, are you kidding me? I finally got my life together in some semblance of order, right? I've got an active church life and friends and family, a wife that actually loves me, kids that think I'm awesome. And now you want me to pick up everything and move, right? And quite frankly, it was the greatest thing that's happened. We ended up moving to South Carolina. We didn't have friends here. We didn't have family here. We didn't have work here. Like, it was just like, this is where we're going to go. Again, we prayed about it. We talked about it. There was common sense. It wasn't just like, hey, roll the dice and let's see how it plays out. There's a lot of discernment. And we ended up going from Charleston up to Greenville. And my company at the time is Superhero Capes. That was still up in Michigan, and I was looking to move it down because we knew Greenville was going to be where we were going to raise our kids. I'm like, okay, well, now we should probably move the business here if that's the plan. And found the piece of property, had to figure out what to do with it, ended up doing a tiny home development.
What was Superhero Capes, and how were you running that remotely?
So we had, I don't know, at the time, like 12 or 15 employees up in Michigan doing customer service. I had a manager, making capes, cutting and sewing. I mean, we were one of the fastest growing private companies in the country in 2013. I got my Inc. 500 plaque
Nice.
For being one of the fastest growing private companies. And actually, I wasn't even supposed to. My partner was actually going to buy me out of that. Some didn't work out the way that we had hoped, and I ended up buying her out. But so I ended up, having to figure out what to do with it. And, I was moving one way or another. So that was partly why she was going to buy me out, because I wanted to move. I didn't know how to sew. Why am I going to, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
But anyway, it ended up working out where I ended up buying her out. And then I just managed it remotely. So when I moved it here, found this property, came into tiny homes. And quite frankly, people that live in tiny home communities, like, they're the coolest people in the world. They're buying a tiny home because it's aspirational. It's about the way that they want to live their life, right? It's no longer, a fancy house. It's no longer a big house with extra rooms that nobody uses to just show off or whatever. It's the function of, I want to go out. I want to go on more vacations. I want to spend more time with friends. I want to go out to eat with them. I want to do more activities. I don't want to have to worry about coming back home and, having to clean the third bathroom in the house, or, getting the 3 bedrooms that my kids moved out of. I got to still clean it because it gets covered in dust. And, and then you got all this extra expense of like, you're heating and cooling the space that you're not using. Why? And so the people that are attracted to tiny homes has just been very eye-opening. I love it. I love that more than anything, because like I said, I love people. I'm a people person.
Yeah.
And like, I like that part of it. I like business too. So I think it's been a good fit. We're doing more and more with the solar now. The solar tax credits that are available have made that more attractive financially, but obviously doing more sustainable energy, renewable energy out there is going to be a good thing as well. All our homes that we build. So after we did the development, I started building. And when I built, I said, I want to do all the best technology. So we do solar roof on all of them. We do IoT, so smart housing technology built into them. We use high R value insulation, steel construction. So it's like bug proof, fireproof, waterproof. And I don't want this to turn into I'm very passionate about what I do from a work perspective. And my intent isn't for this to become an infomercial. Just know that we're amazing, eclipsecottages.com. And
let's be honest. Honestly, this is not an infomercial. We're like 37 minutes in, man. It's the first year we're talking about it. So
wait, there's more.
No. But no, honestly, that's amazing. And this is actually the perfect segue into really kind of the fruits of your labor and how it all came about. Because did you always have business acumen? Was this always something you had in mind?
Yeah.
I mean, because
business was always like my creative release, right? I still remember when I was a kid and like thinking like I was a genius, right? Because I figured out like you could make a taco holder. So when you wanted to get Taco Bell at the drive-through, right? And I was probably like 12, right? I'm thinking if you had like a box that like was on your hand and it could like be underneath and catch all the stuff as it fell, right? Safer to drive and eat a taco. Genius business idea. Somebody has yet to roll it out. I mean, that's $1 billion idea. Free for your listening audience.
And then we want that 10% commission check.
That's right. Royalties. Count it.
Yeah. Just send it over themodernmanpodcast.com. Yeah. So you always had kind of that mindset of kind of like spying out a problem to solve, right?
Yeah. And I think it's like, I really like learning, but I like learning what I wanted to learn, not what school made me learn. I hated school. I hated everything about it. But I really like learning. So business allowed me to do that. I get to learn what I want to learn, and it just happens to be within a business framework, right? So if I want to spend time researching cryptocurrency, right, for fun, I can do that. And my wife jokes because basically I do whatever I want and I just justify it as a business expense. Well, I'm just, it's market research, right?
Yeah.
I go out to eat all the time because I might start a restaurant one day. You never know.
Valid.
So that was, so that's always been a piece of it. I do think a part of it was, kind of rolling the tape back a little bit growing up, parents getting divorced. I remember some of the fights over money. I remember them having a fight over money, believe it or not. And I remember giving my mom like a card and like taping quarters, right? Yeah. As like a 6-year-old. Right. And I don't ask me why I know why I remember it, because it affected me in a profound way. But I still remember that time. I do remember my mom hugging me in that time. Right. And now as a parent, I get it. Right. Like that quarter ain't doing nothing for nobody.
But it's really the sweetest gesture a 6-year-old could make.
Right. Right. So I remember that. Right. And I remember, I don't remember not having money growing up because all our needs were always met. But I remember a fight about money, right? So I think that's part of it too, is business being this economic freedom of being able to create your own wealth, your own income, as opposed to, for me, like, I just couldn't rely on somebody else to hire me. I kept jobs, right? I was a good employee. I was always a hard worker and all that kind of stuff. But it just, I can't stand politics. I can't stand, like, you got to kiss the boss's butt if you want the job, you want the promotion. It's the same thing that bugs me about actual real life politics, right? Like, you got to get stuff done. It's like, who you bribing, right? Like, come on, man, guys, like, can't we just do what's right? Like, they're all idiots as far as I'm concerned.
And I'm not gonna lie, as I'm getting older, and part of me doing this podcast, part of me sending this message out, I wholeheartedly believe that everybody, not just men, but everybody, women that are listening to this, watching this is for you just as much. Even though this message mostly goes to men, because we need to hear it, is get control of your own life. And if anything, these past 2 years has shown me or opened up my eyes, it's really kind of put a fire under my butt in terms of controlling my own life, right? And to your point, I'm a great employee. I work hard, and when I'm working for a company, I want the company to prosper and succeed and do well. But I'm also highly aware that I've made a contract with this company for my time for a dollar amount that they've agreed to pay me. And as long as I'm under contract, as long as we have that agreement, this is what I do. Yeah. But if anyone's listening and they feel trapped in their arena, if they feel trapped in the one spot, I do think business, or what I wrote down, learn and add the business acumen to it, is we could really kind of just live the life we want to live if we have the courage and the work ethic to dive deeply into something that we passionately care about. And I heard that passion. Once we started talking tiny homes, you talked about the people that you've met and really the technology you were able to add to it. So certainly I know that there's passion in what you're doing. And I think the proof is in the pudding too, in the growth and really all the work that you guys have been doing. Even right before this call, I was talking about how busy you are. So I would love, as we come to the end of the episode, I would love for folks to kind of find out how to learn more about Eclipse Cottages, learn more about you and your story. If they wanted to contact you, follow you on social or anything like that, please, what are the links and some of the socials that they can follow? And then we'll get to the last question.
We got eclipsecottages.com. Go there, follow social media, Eclipse Cottages. You'll find us. Like, come on. My name's Justin Draplin. You don't know any others. Google it. You'll find me. I do want to throw out there too, anybody listening, if you are struggling with alcohol or addiction, like, feel free to reach out for me for that too. There are definitely local groups, that you can connect to that are going to probably be better and give you that personal touch. But again, if you want to just reach out to me, I can help connect you to those local groups. I know how to do it. It's very easy. But if anybody just needs that, I'm happy to take those calls and requests as well.
I definitely appreciate that, because I think a lot of us guys, we go through struggles with addiction, and it's not always just alcohol. It could be pornography, it could be a different substance, whatever it might be. If this thing has a hold on us, it has the power. We don't, and we think we can manage it and handle it alone. But that's not always the case. So I definitely appreciate that gesture, and I'll have those links and the socials below in the show notes for anybody that needs that. Last question, Justin. Surprised we made it this far. No, I'm joking. But
we stayed within the lines. We colored within the lines this episode.
We did. I'm impressed with ourselves. We didn't get too crazy, too dicey. But this last question is a little bit of a heavy one. But I feel like you're not going to have any problems with it, but it's simply just, and if it's something you've mentioned already, feel free to kind of revisit that. But simply, what is something that you've seen or something that's happened in your life that really shapes the way you view the world as a man?
I don't know that there's one thing, but I will say and add that my wife has significantly opened my eyes to some things as far as not only how I look and act towards women, towards people that are different than me, but just kind of in general, how the world reacts differently to people, and whether that's intentional or not. I mean, there are some people that is blatantly intentional, right? Like they blatantly don't like you because of this, right? And it could be a skin color, it could be a religion, it could be any of those things. But there's a more subliminal part of that that I think I'm still learning about. And I still have myself, right? And I think my wife has really helped me to understand that, particularly as it relates to women, but it crosses, other barriers as well, right?
Yeah.
The stigmas, life is messy, man. And, yeah, you could, okay, I'm a white, straight male, right? Okay, fine. I won the lottery. Cool.
3 strikes against you, brother.
Yeah.
No, I'm joking.
Okay, fine. I get that there's some truth to that, right? And I don't want to amp that up too much or minimize it too much at all. Like there's a truth to that, right? But it's my choice what I do with it. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of like my challenge today, right? And again, it's more my wife opening my eyes to some of these things and challenging me with stories in her life, what's happened to her, and why she thinks it's happened, and it's been good.
I'll say this, man, keep showing up every day the way you show up when we hang out, when we see each other. And I think you'll do just fine, right? We're both a work in progress. We're heading in the right direction, and just keep pushing on, man, because I think you're very much well on your way.
I love you, brother.
Love you too, brother. And I'm going to recap some of the things that you said along the way, because this episode was fire. And it's going to be a quick recap, but I thought I had to be, when you talked about at a young age, some of the relationships that you had being more of a loner because you thought you had to be. A lot of us get an identity at a young age and we hold on to that through life. It's time to let that identity go. This podcast episode is your permission to let that old identity go and craft and build a new one. Decisions catching up. A lot of times, either life is going to make a decision for us, or we have a look in the mirror moment where we need to make a change. And sometimes that happens when the decisions we make in life start catching up with us. If you're not living the life you want to live, if things just aren't working out the way you want them to, maybe question why and look for some of the decisions you've made in the past that might be leading to some of the headaches that you're currently working on. I was being honest, man. I love that. The 2 questions: who's here to stop drinking? Who's going to have another drink? Those 2 questions might be contradictory, but your answers to them can say a lot. And the fact that you said you were being honest in there plants the seed that starts the watering process to the new habits, the new identity, and of course, changed behavior. And we're never too lost. I love that, man, because just the title CEO, again, I remember as a young kid looking up, quite frankly, as people on TV, looking at people in managing roles, thinking they had it figured out when it wasn't always the case. Now that I'm grown and I'm old, a lot of people are just trying to figure it out. And that doesn't mean that anybody's too far gone. And what are you pouring into your relationship versus what are you getting out of it? Learn what you want to learn and then add the business side to it. And life is messy. There's no way around it. Life certainly is, but it's on us to pick up the broom, clean up our little perimeter and make it better. Justin, man, thank you so much, man. We appreciate this episode.
Awesome.
And to the listeners, the watchers, everybody at home, thank you for making it to the end. We appreciate you as well. And show your appreciation to us by sharing this with a friend you know can get value from it. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can get a new episode each and every week. Leave a rating to let us know how we're doing. That's the only way we can get better, is by you letting us know where to improve. And as always, guys, as we say at the end of the episode, everybody wants the sunshine, but they don't want the rain. But you can't get the pleasure without first the pain. Let's grow.
Let's impact some good today. I think we're going to do a great job.